The king demanded weapons before sunset. The mute blacksmith looked at the sky and quietly refused.
The king commands you. You forge now.
Before we begin, make yourself comfortable, grab your favorite snack, and if you love mysterious African folk tales filled with ancient secrets, powerful lessons, and unforgettable endings, don't forget to subscribe and join our storytelling family. Now, let me ask you a question. Why would a man refuse a king's command? Why would he reject bags of gold, remain silent no matter the threat, and refuse to strike his hammer until the full moon rose? The villagers called him Corset. The king called him a traitor, but neither of them knew the truth. Stay with me until the very end, and you discover why Kanu, the mute blacksmith, never spoke to anyone, and why he would never forge metal until the full moon rose. Long ago, before villages had clocks, before kings counted years, when every tree whispered secrets and every river remembered names, there lived a blacksmith unlike any other. His name was Kanu. He never laughed, he never sang, and no one had ever heard him speak. Not because he was proud, not because he hated people. Kanu was mute, yet despite his silence, he forged the finest spears, strongest hoes, and sharpest knives in all the kingdoms. Warriors crossed mountains for his blades. Farmers waited months for his tools. Kings offered him cattle, gold, and land. But Kanu always refused one thing. No matter how desperate the customer, no matter how much they offered, he would never touch his forge until the full moon rose. If someone came during daylight, he simply shook his head. If they begged at sunset, he pointed toward the sky. If they threatened him, he quietly closed his workshop. Everyone thought he was cursed down. Some believed he served spirits. Others whispered that witches forged through him. Children were warned never to walk near his forge after dark, because every full moon, strange sounds echoed from inside. The hammer struck iron, yet no one ever saw sparks flying. Only blue lights escaped through the cracks, and voices, soft voices, speaking in a language no human understood. One season, disaster struck. A terrible drought swallowed the land, streams dried, harvests failed, animals collapsed beneath the scorching sun. Neighboring kingdoms prepared for war over the few remaining rivers. King Oduma summoned every blacksmith in the kingdom. We need weapons. Immediately, every forge burned day and night. Only Kanu's remained cold. The soldiers marched to his workshop. Their captain slammed his spear against the door. The king commands you. No answer. They kicked open the entrance. Inside, Kanu calmly sat beside an unlit furnace. The sun still shone outside. The captain threw a bag filled with gold before him. You forge now? Kanu slowly looked upward. The moon had not risen. He pushed the gold away. The captain grew furious. He grabbed Kanu's shirt. Still, no words, only those sad eyes. The captain spat on the floor. If you will not forge for your own people, you are a traitor. He ordered the soldiers to destroy Kanu's workshop. They smashed shelves, shattered clay pots, scattered charcoal, broke every hammer except one. Oddly, no matter how hard they struck that final hammer, it refused to break. The soldiers eventually left. Kanu picked it up, held it against his chest, and silently wept. That same evening, a young orphan girl named Amina arrived. She had secretly watched everything. She gently helped Kanu gather the broken tools. He smiled. It was the first smile anyone had ever seen on his face. From that night onward, Amina visited him every evening. She spoke. He listened. She laughed. He smiled. She asked questions. He answered with drawings in the sand. One night, she finally asked, "Why do you only walk when the full moon appears?" Kanu stared at the moon for a long time. Then, for the first time, he invited someone inside his forge. The workshop looked ordinary until midnight. The full moon reached the center of the sky. Its silver light entered through a hole in the roof, landing directly upon the anvil. The cold iron suddenly glowed blue. The old hammer trembled. Without touching it, Kanu knelt, closed his eyes, and something impossible happened. The hammer floated into his hands. The furnace lit itself, not with orange fire, but with pale blue flames. Then, the shadows around the room began moving, not like darkness, like people, tall figures, dozens of them. Each carried invisible hammers, invisible tongues, invisible blades. Amina gasped. She wanted to run, but Kanu gently held her hand. The shadowy figures surrounded the forge. Then, together, they began forging. Without making a single mistake, every strike echoed like thunder, yet no sparks appeared, only glowing blue dust. Amina watched in amazement. Then she noticed something even stranger. Whenever Kanu struck the metal, the shadow struck with him, not after, not before, exactly together, as though they were one. When dawn approached, the shadows vanished, the fire died, the hammer became ordinary once more. Amina looked at Kanu with frightened eyes. He drew only 4 words into the dirt. "They are my family." Many years earlier, Kanu had not been mute. He had spoken beautifully. His father had been the greatest blacksmith the land had ever known. Their family believed something sacred. Iron came from the bones of the earth. Fire came from the breath of the sky. A blacksmith must never forge with anger, never forge through greed, never forge merely to kill. Metal carried memory. Every weapon remembered the heart that created it. One dry season, a cruel king demanded hundreds of swords. Kanu's father refused. The king murdered every member of their family, everyone except young Kanu. The boy hid beneath the forge, listening, watching, unable to scream. The horror stilled his voice forever. That night, as the full moon rose, the spirits of his ancestors returned, not to seek revenge, but to finish what they had started. We forge only for balance. They placed the sacred hammer into Kanu's hands, then made one promise. "We shall help you only beneath the full moon, only when heaven and earth can both witness your hearts." Amina finally understood. It wasn't a curse, it was a covenant. Kanu never forged during daylight, because the ancestors never lied beneath the moon. Without them, his hammer could create weapons driven by human greed. With them, every blade carried justice. News spread. Of course it did. Secrets never sleep. Soon, King Oduma heard everything. He laughed. "So the spirits forge for him? Good. They shall forge for me." He ordered soldiers to seize Kanu during the next full moon. That night, the moon rose larger than anyone remembered, cloudless, bright, silent. The soldiers surrounded the forge. Inside, the ancestors had already arrived. Blue flames danced. Invisible hammers echoed. The captain kicked open the door. There! Take him! The soldiers rushed forward. The moment they crossed the doorway, every hammer strike stopped. Silence. The blue fire vanished. The shadows disappeared. Kanu slowly lowered his hammer. The sacred spirits would never forge in the presence of violence. The soldiers dragged him before the king. King Oduma smiled. You will forge until every kingdom fears my name. Kanu remained silent. The king ordered his execution for sunrise. That night, Amina cried beneath the great baobab tree. She begged the ancestors, if you truly love justice, save him. Nothing happened, only silence. Then, the wind changed, clouds gathered. The full moon emerged once more after hiding behind them. The ground trembled from every abandoned forge, every broken anvil, every forgotten hammer. Blue light rose into the sky. Thousands of glowing sparks floated toward the prison. The iron chains holding Kanu suddenly shattered by themselves, not because anyone struck them, because metal remembered. Every tool Kanu had ever forged, every farming hoe, every cooking knife, every plow, every honest piece of iron answered its maker's heart. Across the kingdom, iron began moving, not to kill, to protect. Soldiers dropped their swords as the weapons buried themselves harmlessly in the earth. Gates unlocked, prison doors opened, chains fell apart. No blood was spilled, not one life was taken. King Oduma stood frozen. His golden sword melted into flowing silver before his eyes. The ancestors finally appeared, not as shadows, but glowing figures beneath the full moon. Kanu looked upon his parents once again. His mother gently touched his throat for the first time in decades. His voice returned. He whispered only one sentence. The forge belongs to life. The ancestors smiled, then disappeared forever. King Oduma fell to his knees. He realized strength had never belonged to weapons. It belonged to those who chose not to misuse them. He surrendered his throne. The people chose wiser leaders. Wars slowly faded. The kingdom healed. From that day onward, Kanu no longer waited for the full moon because he feared forging alone. He waited because he wanted to remember. Every full moon, he lit the blue fire, not because the ancestors still came, but because gratitude deserved its own ritual. Amina became his apprentice. Years later, she became the greatest blacksmith the kingdom had ever known. People often asked why she always looked at the moon before striking hot iron. She would simply smile, then raise the old hammer and say, the strongest metal is never shaped by fire alone. It is shaped by the heart that holds it. Even today, some elders say, if you walk past an abandoned forge beneath a bright African full moon, and you listen without speaking, you may hear invisible hammers striking iron, not making weapons for war, but shaping courage, patience, justice, and hope for anyone whose heart is pure enough to hear them. And that is why the mute blacksmith never forged metal until the full moon rose. For some gifts become powerful only when guided by wisdom and witnessed by the light that reveals every heart.
If you enjoyed this content and want to see more, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an update. Hit that like button to show your support and share this with your friends and community to help us grow. Your support makes a huge difference. Thank you for being part of this journey.